Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the question and answer session from today. I think for everybody this morning, we've had some amazing presentations, some fabulous information, gives us a lot to think about. And actually, as we sit here, the questions have been zooming in, so we've got an awful lot of questions to try and get through in the next 40 minutes. And I think the one thing this is going to highlight is that our Invest Northern Ireland Consumer Insights team is going to be exceptionally busy for the next few months as well, answering a lot of questions for the Northern Ireland industry. Look, I'm going to go just start straight in here today because I just think there's so much to get through. I'm going to start with Alex. Alex, I see from your presentation this morning, we're seeing calorie counts go up in baskets over lockdown, probably a bit of boredom with people as well, bulk buying, as you were saying this morning. But people are still saying diet is very important. And we're seeing some interesting, some of the stats from you, 7 out of 10 males, 6 out of 10 females overweight. And I was really shocked at the stat, a third of children starting school overweight on this one here. I'm just going to go straight to one of the questions that come in. What impact do you think the recent announcement from the HFSS restrictions will have on shoppers' purchases? Do you think it'll have much of a challenge?
Hello everyone. To be honest, I think the restrictions on promotions and where items are placed might lead to some reduction in shoppers buying sort of maybe crisps and chocolates and stuff like that, just purely because they're kind of less in your face. But I think people are always going to want to eat crisps, eat chocolates. There's always going to be birthdays. There's always going to be, hopefully, office parties again in the future. So I think those items are still going to be bought. And I think they're still going to be popular. I mean, if people want to buy chocolate, they can head to the chocolate aisle or they can head to the ice cream aisle. But I think it might impact more on the kind of unplanned sort of impulse purchases, just by the fact that they're not so easily seen by consumers if they're not on the end of the aisles.
So do you think the retailers are going to sort of move from gauntlet ends and end of aisles with some of these products and sort of hide them more in the main shelving?
I think they might have to, if the restrictions, when they do come in place, if you're classed as HFSS, I don't think you have any choice, but you have to be on the aisle. And whether that will just lead to consumers slowly becoming aware that they're no longer on the end of the aisle and you have to actually actively go down the aisle, it may result in a slight dip and then going back to more normal purchasing once people kind of figure out where they are now.
Yeah. I'm just going to come to Hannah and Lucy now with a question. Some fantastic information you presented this morning in your sixth hypothesis, and 37% of people now cooking from scratch as well through lockdown, and still obesity. The government's trying to drive obesity down by a half on this. Vitamin supplements increasing on that side of things as well. Out of your sixth hypothesis that you presented this morning, which do you think will have the biggest impact on health, short term and medium term?
Thanks, Joe. I think that's a really great question. And I think it's one that will vary hugely by individual, but also quite possibly by socioeconomic group. So kind of on that, I personally think that affordability is almost going to be this hypothesis that overarchingly defines how much people are going to be able to focus on the other hypotheses. So, buying into holistic health projects or championing sustainability and even focusing on their weight. So I guess we know that so many people have been furloughed, potentially on and off for sort of 6 months on 80% of their salary. More have been made redundant, and sadly, our chief economist says that that's probably going to increase as well. So we know that for those kind of shoppers, actually, they're preparing for a recession. They don't have a lot of savings, and therefore spending more money on healthy food, which is seen as more expensive, might be a real challenge. I do think, though, where this gets really interesting is actually there's some data by Walnut Unlimited. So they track the views of about 2,000 Great British adults regularly. And they've shown that actually 57% of people really believe that they've managed to save money during COVID-19. So they don't have to commute, they can't pop to the pubs or the beauticians, and they've therefore got more expendable cash to spend on healthier food. And I think what we're seeing there is this real polarization forming with people who have more disposable income and people who have significantly less disposable income. So when we're looking at those who've saved, actually there's a huge demographic split. Only 40% of lower socioeconomic groups, so your Ds and Es, have managed to save more, compared to 68% of people in AB, so the people who generally had more money anyway. And there's already health discrepancies between those groups. So I suppose I'm saying that hypothesis overarchingly is going to get bigger, and it's going to highlight a real health discrepancy between socioeconomic groups. And that's one reason that kind of in the longer term, the governmental view of tackling obesity really is key, and that hypothesis is so important. It's why we're seeing these harsher rules that Alex was talking about on promotions, advertising, and it's why we're seeing further reformulation targets coming in as well. You know, Boris has spoken about his own experience, and the data really does show that COVID is impacting hugely on weight and race. But I suppose I didn't introduce myself to people, and I'm a nutritionist, and I'd love to think as a nutritionist that actually the hypothesis that was going to mean most people was this one about championing healthy and sustainable diets. I think in the very long term, we will get there. There is this idea of building back better. There's this idea of championing local. And I know that the industry are really engaging behind programs to promote healthy, sustainable food more than ever. But sadly, for a shopper kind of perspective, that's just, you know, it's not on their radar yet, because the urgent realities of affordability and obesity are just too close for comfort.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much for that there. Alice, I'm going to come to you next, if you don't mind. Some fantastic stats this morning on especially out of home and for the food service, and to give much more thoughts. We know the effect that COVID has had on the food service at the moment. It's decimated a lot of it, and restaurants, pub chains, and the rest of it. But some fantastic innovation amongst the drinks industry. It was very fascinating presented, and one of something I learned myself this morning was this out of home to take home. I hadn't heard of that before, so very, very, very interesting on that front. But I'm going to come to you with a question from your presentation this morning. In your presentation, you mentioned the importance of health and lunchtime, and in particular food to go. However, will this still be as relevant with more people working from home?
Hi, yeah, thanks for your question, Drew. So obviously I mentioned in my presentation that kind of healthy occasions in the out-of-home market are really dependent on multiple kind of factors. So for example, it's much more, people are much more likely to kind of choose an establishment based on kind of healthy options earlier on in the week, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They're much more likely to kind of pick an establishment based on healthy options for lunchtime and breakfast, and in particular kind of lunchtime. Now, lunchtime is this occasion where you're seeing the majority of over half of occasions being consumed off premise, so a food to go occasion. But then we have this whole kind of new phenomenon this year where you've got all these people who usually are kind of in city centre locations picking up food from food to go specialists, food to go kind of outlets, and that's kind of, you know, they're not being populated as such at the moment. But will this be relevant? In short, our answer is kind of yes, it certainly will be. So there was a question at the start of the pandemic, and we were all kind of scratching our heads and thinking, okay, does this mean kind of the temporary kind of pause or end on kind of food to go as a concept with, you know, people cooking from home? We've seen stats from other presentations and stats that we've picked up too that show kind of the boom in people cooking from scratch and stuff in their home. However, what we've seen more recently, and what we've kind of predicted in our new food to go kind of report, is that food to go is going to be the area of the out of home market that bounces back the best. Now, certain reasons for that. Number one, they're obviously the most set up for the current situation. So whilst we've seen like excellent response from kind of people who aren't used to doing operators who aren't used to doing kind of takeaway and stuff, and now they've really kind of nailed it, still it's those kind of food to go specialists that this is kind of their heartland, so they're in a real strong position from the start to kind of build up again. But then also we're seeing this concept of food to go home, and this concept of lunchtime fatigue, where you've got your consumer who is just getting bored of making the same. I don't know about you, but I'm getting so bored of making the same meals again and again. And you're going out, you might choose then therefore to kind of go out and pick up your lunch one day as a bit of a treat, as opposed to making that same kind of chicken salad that you've been doing the whole of this time. So there's this whole concept of food to go home. There's lots of operators like Pret and who have done products which are specifically for, you can pick it up, you can heat it up in your microwave, and so on. Now, what we've also seen though in this time is that people as a mission for going out, the treat mission has increased. Now, the question is, does this mean, okay, well, when they're going out, if they're treating themselves, does this mean that they're not going to be healthy because it's a treat? Actually, I think it has a different connotation at lunchtime. I think at lunchtime, that treat is about spending a little bit more, whereas at dinner, maybe it's about being more indulgent. So in short, I do think kind of food to go is relevant, and it will continue to be relevant. And it will be kind of an area that, despite more people working from home, will continue to be important. The other thing, though, I guess that is worth noting is just which food to go outlets, where they're located, will have a very different performance. So, for example, before this second lockdown came in, I went into the office, which is a central London location, Holborn, usually completely busy. There's a Pret opposite our office, normally queues outside the door at lunchtime. It actually has now taken to shutting at 2 o'clock because it just doesn't have enough trade. Whereas you take the Pret by my flat, which is kind of at London suburb, like zone 2-ish residential area, usually wouldn't be that busy on a weekday. It's kind of flipped. I went out a couple of weeks ago to go get some food from there. Now you've got the queue out the door there. So it's really about kind of food to go is going to kind of over-index in places that perhaps it didn't before. But food to go as a kind of a whole is kind of going to bounce back. It is bouncing back, and it will continue to be important. And it is kind of a key healthy out-of-home occasion for consumers.
Yeah, no, I completely understand and agree with you. The lunchtime, especially, there's things I can do with an omelette and many varieties I can make of an omelette. So I completely agree with, there's definitely a need. Lindsay, I'm going to come to you now. Really amazed. I think you must have had me in your interview panel as a gatekeeper and picking up Jaffa cakes and trying to stop putting treats into the basket on that one. Lindsay, what are the key factors that make shoppers reach for their brands? And
sorry, Drew?
Is it like, what's the key factors that make shoppers reach for the brands? Is it sort of like shelf positioning? Is it messaging? Is it packaging? Is it promotion? Is it self-ready? Is it the sort of the PR, the marketing behind that?
Yeah, well, I think all those factors certainly contribute to, luring the consumer in to purchase their product. And whenever, in reference to that specific accompanied shop sample, really what I was seeing there was that the whole area of familiarity and habit come into play, where shoppers were tend to buy the same brands that they were really familiar with, that they recognised, and that almost reduced the effort for them to make, that or to speed up that shopping process. And it was also interesting in that as you were following the shoppers around, they were recalling like a set repertoire of recipes. So in that, they were buying the same brands, the same products time and time again each week, and that made that process easier. But you talk about brands specifically, and packaging really was, packaging design, something that was really attractive and eye-catching, did actually draw the consumer in. But one of the biggest factors that we found was actually that led on to another large study across Ireland was promotions, and how promotional offers really did lure the consumer in and were very influential, because those those brands that were often on promotion were national brands and often deemed more expensive. So whenever they saw them on offer, they instantly wanted to, you know, trade up, I guess, and buy those sort of brands. And, you know, just not to go on too much, but just to say, you know, I've just submitted a paper there where we did an analysis looking at the nutritional profile of national brands versus own brands and versus then local brands. And actually what we found was that the local brands did not perform very well compared to the national brands and actually were less healthy. And so there is real opportunity there for local producers to start really improving the nutritional profile of their products. Now, that's not to say, you know, there's not a great body of work being done, but it was just interesting in terms of those insights that we found. And also that I had written down here as well that actually, I'm trying to frantically find here what else our findings showed. Yeah, that actually own brands compared to national brands were actually healthier. So, you know, I thought that was quite interesting as well, to show that the retailer own brands have been doing a lot of work in this area and in improving the nutritional profile of the products. Hopefully I've answered your question, Drew.
Thank you. Yes, you have. You have. Well, it actually is very well, because it leads on to my next person here, Brona from Forest Feast. And I think the Forest Feast at the forefront of health as well, with their anti-snack range. It's fantastic. Brona, what is the consumer demographic for anti-snack range, and what's the marketing mix do you use to target them?
Hi everyone. Thanks for the question, Drew. I guess Forest Feast is sort of the primary brand that everybody would be aware of, but ActiSnack is a new brand within our demographic. I suppose the Acti within it is symbolizing active, or you know, people who are wanting to get active, and then the snack is the second part of the brand. Most things that we do at the minute are based around snacking. So our demographic is quite pointed around those people who are genuinely wanting to get out and get active, and who want to feel well to support their goals. So they tend to be busy, pragmatic, male and females. They've got a very proactive approach to their own life. So they will genuinely set their own objectives and get out of bed themselves in the morning for a run rather than have to be pushed. What they do look for is sort of smart, no-nonsense snacks that support their goals, because basically what they're trying to do is stay powered up all day. These guys aren't into sort of dieting or reducing carbs. Genuinely, they want to kind of keep powered up. So what's important to them is what they're putting into their body is fuel, but it's also very nutritional, and it drives the objectives for them to replace all of the kind of salts or proteins that they're losing during exercise. I guess, you know, that point is very important, because the snacks that we do are genuinely packed with nutrition rather than just being empty calories. And unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of sort of negative things out in the press at the minute that sort of misinform consumers around what's actually good for you. So, you know, the way, for example, HFS has been set up is quite it's sort of anti real and natural health in a lot of way. It penalizes products like nuts or cheese that are nutritionally fortified versus, you know, for example, sugar-free sweets. So unfortunately that's set up the wrong way, but our consumers are genuinely quite well educated and sort of understand that things like nuts and dried fruit are healthy for you. For them, taste is key. They've done a lot of exercise, they've done a lot of sport during the week, and they want to get out there and enjoy their food. So you often hear runners eating a lot of cake, but the same way they want sort of, you know, dark chocolate, salt and vinegar, nuts, and we get a lot of, I guess, good sales off the back of the products that taste the best, because ultimately that's often what it comes down to. So, I mean, I guess that's our general consumer. We do have very pointed bullseye consumers. We call one Joe and one Jenny. They're more the extreme adventurer, and they're who we sort of position the brand against. But in theory, we target anybody from couch to 5K right through to sort of gym goer, or somebody who just likes to go walking in the hills at the weekend.
Yeah. No, I think some of the work I've been doing myself in the last couple of years, you're seeing a real sort of the consumer Europe is much more advantageous, and they know an awful lot more about nutrition and understand it, and they're not as negatively affected by some of these negative messages and nuts because they're high in fat and all the rest. But it's all the protein, it's all the vitamins that they all naturally consume. And some of the work I've been doing recently, you're seeing much more foods now starting to put melatonin in that. They're putting melatonin for sleep and increasing in that side of things, seeing that there. Alex, I'm going to come back to you here. All this health messages and health. How much further do you think health as a reason for choosing food and drink will grow?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have, so in my slides earlier, we had it at 28% of all food and drink occasions. Health is a reason why something's consumed. Back in sort of 2018, that number was up to around sort of 33% of consumption occasions. So just from where we are now to where we have been, there is potential for that to grow. I think, and it's kind of a point that's been touched on by some of the others here, although health is going to be important to people and it will be a core reason why people choose what they eat and drink, the more important factors will always be kind of, do they enjoy it and how practical is it to make? So I think there is room for it to grow, but I don't think it will ever kind of reach the same levels as practicality and enjoyment. So that kind of a third of occasions feels like it's achievable, but whether it's got a huge amount more to go above that, probably not. But I think even if you have 33% or even 40% of occasions driven by a health need, that's still a significant amount of occasions out there. I think also key to keep in mind is that when we look at a consumption occasion, that could be having a cup of tea through to having your main evening meal. And within that range, there's going to be a huge mix of whether you're drinking something for practicality, whether you're drinking it for having something for enjoyment, whether you're having something for health. So there is room for it to grow, but there's also just the number of occasions people have to consume food and drink. I don't think it's going to kind of be up to the level we see with enjoyment.
Yeah, Lindsay, you going to add a comment there?
Yeah, just to add as well, I just thought it was interesting that the NHS and also the Lancet recently reported a link between vitamin D, and COVID. And, that is going to be quite important, I think, and that will shape some consumer purchase habits, like product items like fish, seafood, eggs, and mushrooms, and even fortified foods as well with vitamin D. Consumers will start looking for that. And I've no evidence necessarily to base that on, but just to say that, we're getting those messages from government. So naturally consumers, might be prompted to look for those specific ingredients.
Hannah, you're going to say something there?
Yeah, I just think it's a really interesting one when we're talking about vitamins and immunity and fortification and things, is that the very initial studies that we've seen coming out from the supermarkets themselves is that customers really are looking for these immunity claims, whether that be in health claims, on pack claims. But sadly, they're really turning to multivitamins. So whilst I appreciate what you were saying about vitamin D and looking for fish and eggs, I think the sad reality is that the majority of customers are either going and picking up a packet of vitamin D pills. There's been a huge surge in vitamin C and the concept of that being an immunity. Now, a lot of retailers did tell us that they're also selling more citrus fruit, but not nearly as much as they've seen in kind of vitamin uplift. And I think Holland and Barrett reported something like a 500% uplift on multivitamins. So there's this real discrepancy between people wanting health, but not necessarily seeking real food for it. And I think that's where there is an education piece, but there's also a cost perception, because, a tub of 120 tablets might not cost as much as getting your 5 a day every single day. So I think there's a real education piece and a cost piece there.
Yeah, and there's probably a bit of I know there's a bit of a conflict out there as well about, in terms of vitamins and supplements, how much do you actually absorb, which is better for you, fresh food, frozen food? Do you absorb more through that there, your gut as well? And the gut health all plays part of everything as well. So I think there's a lot of education out there and across the board, because I know, Lindsay, you said about lack of skills as well on that one. Hannah, and I'm just going to come back to you on a question here as well. With all this growing on health, which channel has the greatest rise in demand for health products? Which channels are you seeing where the greatest demand is coming from here?
If you don't mind, I'm going to defer to Lucy on that one, because I'm a nutritionist, but she's very much our retail expert, so she'll be able to answer much better than I will.
No bother.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, it's no worries. Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think, in all honesty, it's quite difficult to tell at the moment, because one thing that COVID has done is certainly just really change how people are shopping the different channels. Like at the start of the first lockdown, shoppers were using discounters a lot less, but we will expect in the future for them to start using them a lot more. We've seen a lot of people doing much bigger shops in smaller stores, and it's kind of difficult to tell at the moment which of these habits will stick. But I do think ultimately that perhaps the convenience channel has seen the greatest demand rise, and I think that they're sort of the best place to really capitalize on that going forwards. It's a channel that we've seen a lot of development in over just the past couple of years. If you take Japan, for example, a market that very much depends on its convenience channel, they've got some really interesting developments going on in health, where they really use it as a differentiator in convenience stores. So one of their biggest convenience store retailers is Lawson, and they've got a specific format called Natural Lawson, and that's very much focused on health products. If you take Family Mart, they've got a new format which they launched last year called Fit to Go, which actually has a 24-hour gym on the top of the convenience store, and all the products are very much geared towards health. So I think, yeah, they're really sort of pushing forwards in that area. I guess ultimately we need to think more about the mission than the channel. And I think, as we've sort of said, everybody is looking, well, not everybody, but a lot of people are looking to be healthier. So, there's opportunity in every channel to satisfy that mission. I think that's really important.
It's really now just finding the gap, isn't it?
Yeah,
Alison,
absolutely.
Yeah, Alison, I'm just going to come to you here. I know this morning in your presentation, you mentioned health means different things to different people, but surely this will pose a challenge for operators and suppliers. And how can they really combat this?
Yeah, so I guess this is kind of what we're talking about, like how health is so ever changing and what it means to people. It is kind of a challenge for sure. I guess when we've done research into it and some of the stuff I presented this morning, we showed that there are certain groups though that kind of bracket health into similar meanings. So it will really be about combating this, will be about kind of knowing your outlet and knowing your customer. So for example, let's take a restaurant that is in central London is going to work completely different to somewhere in like the rural southwest, like Cornwall. It's a completely different audience. So London, you've got a younger audience, and they're probably more after they are after these kind of trendier kind of healthy things like plant-based diets, and on the flip side high protein diets and so on, whereas you've got older consumers who are more interested in when you ask them kind of what does health mean to you, they talk about low fat, low sugar, low calories and that kind of thing. So it'll be really about kind of getting under the skin of who your customer is, and I think that would be really essential. Now for a small operator, perhaps this is a bit of a simpler task. You might have 1, 2, 3 kind of stores, establishments that you can kind of tailor, maybe be a little bit more flexible with menu changes and so on. But for bigger operators, sure, this is going to be more of a challenge. And we see national operators do have slightly kind of different menus based on region. However, these tend to be kind of small changes. These tend to be kind of changes in like, menu prices and stuff like that. But I guess can bigger operators challenge themselves to be even more granular. So if we talk about kind of the retail market, and we talk about maybe like independent retailers, you see people like Spar and so on have very segmented, very kind of planograms that are based on location, that are based on region, that are based on, are they on a high street, are they rural, and so on. So can kind of big food service establishments that kind of challenge themselves to be even more granular and specific and follow in kind of that suit, I guess, would be kind of one way to think about combating this. From a supplier perspective, so they need to kind of look at their product and kind of look at who does it work with, where is that shopper, and therefore what kind of restaurants and kind of outlets and stuff are available in that area for kind of you to target your product. So yeah, that would be kind of my point, is about kind of having a really tailored solution where possible.
Yeah, I think it's for suppliers, manufacturers, I think this is where the innovation has to play a key part, not one hat fits all. And the great thing is this challenge opens opportunities for everybody if you put the time and the opportunity and the NPD behind it. Which leads us on to Lindsay, and we spoke a lot about channels and different retail formats, from multis, nationals to discounters to really the convenience sector. I was just wanting to ask you, how can we as producers or suppliers support consumers to achieving a more healthy shop? What more can we do as suppliers?
That's a good question and a big question to answer, to be honest.
Everybody come in if you feel that you have an answer.
I guess just, I guess it is about your packaging and clear communication of your messaging as well. What is it that you're really trying to achieve in terms of health? And is that clear on front of pack for the consumer? The one thing that I did note throughout all the shops was consumer is stressed. It is an effort. It doesn't matter what age, stage they're at. The shopping process does seem to be an effortful one, and so we have to try and reduce that somehow. And so I think that messaging is really important for the consumer, and just really signaling, what is it that you want, what is it that's healthy about your product that you really want to sell, and I think Brona did a really excellent job there, really showing, understand the needs of their consumer and the key messages that they want to hit home, in terms of health.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've answered that question correctly, no. Drew.
I'm going to come to Brona because our time's getting short.
Yeah, I'd sort of like to add, I guess what we notice is that we need a huge amount of support from government bodies, but mainly from the retailers in terms of putting in the right place in stores. So consumers will have good intentions, but when they're sitting with giant pound packs of chocolate at the till, it's very difficult for consumers to turn a blind eye to that. And what we know is that on very neutral platforms like Amazon or Ocado, where consumers are shopping more by search function, healthy products tend to perform better because consumers aren't being faced with bog offs and really deep discounts on non-healthy products. So it's very, it's all in well having a very healthy product, but when it's tucked in away at the back of stores somewhere in some sort of dusty aisle that looks like it's, from a health food store years ago, it's not helpful. So we do have a huge reliance on and we do get a lot of support locally from our retailers to put it in the right place.
Brilliant. Look, I'm afraid to say our time has come to an end here, and we've got so many more questions, and there's loads more questions have come in. Unfortunately, we're not going to get them answered at this session, but I'd like to say we'll come back to anybody that's asked a question. We will come back. We'll forward it on to the presenters and get them to answer the question for you in as much detail. Look, we've had lots of information today, lots of challenging information, from health treats, healthiness versus treat, time, health, nutritional labeling, different chains. But I think the one great thing that we've identified today, through the use of stats with yourselves and all through the different channels, I think there's an awful lot of opportunities for us, for manufacturers. And I think there's an awful lot of opportunity for, if we take food service, for restaurants, the smaller chains who can adapt very quickly and turn menus around rather than the larger chains. And for some of the smaller independent manufacturers and Brona, manufacturers like yourselves, who can make decisions without having to go through the heavy boards. I know from your CV, you're ex-Kerry like myself, so you don't have to go through all the tiers of boards looking for CapEx, and so you can make those decisions. I think this morning has been great for everybody. I've learned an awful lot, and I think there's been some fantastic opportunities. I just want to thank you all so much for all the information and for the presentations. They're going to be available now for the next 6 weeks. I think it's after 4 o'clock today. They will be available for the next 6 weeks. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.